Hi everyone, welcome to an Adobe Photoshop Challenge recap of last month, March. We did so many cool things and I'm excited to show you the gamut because we learned so much. Again, my name is Cyn Lagos. If those of you that are on the chat right now don't know who I am, I will do my introduction, but I want to say hi to you first. So jump on the chat on Behance. Toby, come here. Stop. Okay, so that was my dog. Gotta love my dog's timing. So jump on the chat on Behance or on YouTube and say hello to my chat. Say hello to my dog on the chat. In the meantime, I'm going to introduce myself. All right, folks, I am on almost everywhere online, but really cool stuff. I'm currently trying to build my YouTube channel by teaching y'all all the skills that I know and all the cool experimentations that I do. I want to show you those workflows. So a lot of my visual mentorship happens here on YouTube. If you're not subscribed to my YouTube, I welcome you to do so. I will be doing lots of streams. We have a current stream going on called Medium Unlimited, super cool. It runs here and it runs on my YouTube channel. So keep up with that and follow us on Adobe Live for streams like this. All right, now that my dog is silent, okay? All right, folks, let's go over what we did last month. It was so cool. I mean, it was so many different little parts that really build a project, and all of it was created in Adobe Photoshop, which is amazing because in itself, you think you have to always be using several things, but what if you only want to stay in one program? Can you accomplish it all? I'm gonna say yes, right? So here are the streams that we went over. The focus of our stream Actually, this was part of it. The focus of our stream was to create a fantastical Photoshop collage. And that collage was going to in turn become part of a promotion, right? So of your work, of your own artwork. So what was important for me was to show you how many different ways you can really use Photoshop, repurpose Photoshop in order to create different things within it and in order to create a project from scratch and also to create the promotional marketing for your project to showcase it. So that was really fun. So what we did here to begin at the start, we're on Behance, something that we learned that we can use to showcase our work. So in our Photoshop challenge, we use photography to create our ingredients for our collage. And then we moved on to creating AI ingredients, which is a brand new thing that I'm just exploring at the moment. What purposes can I reintroduce that element of AI? What projects can I reintroduce something new? And in this case, I felt like introducing AI kind of left room for something maybe random to happen, which is not entirely in my control. And I thought that could be really cool for us to explore. I know everybody got a different result. I know this because everybody posted on Discord. It was so cool and I love it. We're gonna go over some of those cool projects here. So if you're part of those projects, oh my God, say hello in the chat and we'll be shouting you out. Already on the chat, I see Robert and I see Alejandro. Hey, what's up? And if you have any questions throughout, let me know. I know you participated already, but just in case. All right, so type challenge. We did a type challenge as well, and that was super fun because we were able to explore the different characteristics of type and just introduce analog elements to it. And I was able to introduce textures and artifacts and just create a bit of an analog texture to what would otherwise be digital typography. Digital typography is a result of our world of tech. However, I wanted to bring in a humanistic element to this artwork by adding and layering textures as much as possible. And that's what I encourage you to do. Play with those color modes in Photoshop. Play with the variety of textures. Anything could be texture. So in this scenario, we actually generated those palm trees, those foliage, that leaf back here. This eye right here was generated. So we were able to generate the clouds, the birds. I mean, things that would otherwise be maybe part of my library, my photo library, I would have to scout them, or you can always resort to stock photography. But this added a new process to my workflow, which was super fun to do. So we created different variations. If you are curious to where you can find some of these, I'm going to show you where to do that because I want to see your explorations. I can already see that out of one artwork, I was able to do a new reiteration, and that just leaves so much cool room for so many more things to be done. So go look at the Behance project. You will find the Rewatch Restream in there. I will list them all shortly. But this one is one of my favorites by far, and I'll show you what it is right here. All right. So in week one, we explore a fantastical Photoshop challenge for a collage. And this was really important for me to explore because collaging is an old system, an old practice, I would say, that people have been doing for so long, of just cutting up photos ever since photos existed, in fact. And there's so many iterations. I've seen some in museums, and I'm going to play this so you can see it. It's really cool to see how many different ways you can cut up pieces and start playing with layout. I did it quite literally cutting paper to begin because I felt like I needed to respect the practice of collaging and understand a little bit better how this feels in an analog way so that I can then translate it over into the digital space, right? In this case, I was able to recognize that there was room for typography. There was room for layout design in different ways. And what mattered was layering. Right? In here, you can see I'm layering as well, right? Where we have things in the back, we have things in the foreground. And there's something really eye-opening about this because you realize this is the formatting we use in Photoshop. We just got used to the tech part. But in reality, all of this kind of stems or is inspired from a practice that is mostly analog. Like if you see things in Photoshop that remind you of photography, it's not there by accident. It was totally inspired by photography, by the technique and the craftsmanship of photographs, like dodge burning, right? Like burning tools, dodging tools, things like that are film practices. So I encourage you to to challenge yourself to do an art form that already has a lot of like different artworks and see how you can introduce a new element into it. In this case, I loved introducing AI, and that was really helpful for my creation. So you can see here, as we developed our design, we were able to start layering a lot of different AI generated images. So in this case, for example, we've got these really cool flock of birds, and I intentionally asked for a black sky or a black background in some cases in order to blend it with the layering of my program, of my project. So think about that. Blending will be really important because a lot of these files at the moment may require for you to flatten them in order to mess with them even more, in order to add textures like halftone dots, which we did introduce into this, or grain. Sometimes you do have to flatten it. If you can, always choose a smart object. That's always the best way to approach your project. A way that you can always go back and edit and replay, right? And explore a new different layout or different design. But if it's all flattened, it's a little bit hard to do that. So in this case, you can see how we use the textures and the color modes that I mentioned earlier. So that was one of the techniques that we explored on week 1. How can we create a collage that is filled with texture, that is full of color, and it has so much variety that we can create new iterations each time. So that was our week 1. Let's explore week 2. Week 2 was completely different, but still a big part of our project as a whole. So let's see what we did on week 2. All right, so we got week 2 here. I hit refresh. All right. So in week 2, we were exploring typography. Typography is an interesting element that we tend to put sort of on the sidelines as we build our project. In this case, I was treating it as a headliner. This is important. I wanted to call a lot of attention, and I needed to blend with this really wonderfully textured collage. So really, really cool brief, right? Like, why wouldn't I want to explore this? I love when I get briefs like that. It just encourages a lot of exploration. And in this case, I was really trying to create texture, but not by layering, but rather by meddling with the digital aspect of my font. And you can see in some cases, because this is flat, the way it drags the pixels, it can be very abrupt. So subtlety and kindness in this process is very important. So you can see how we played with different textures, in this case with the gallery. I love playing with textures in photography, but in typography, I think it isn't explored enough. And I love this part. So in that exploration, we created our own gradients. So I welcome you to drop in, find out more about these. We had so many cool assets, which were very helpful to our entire workflow in this one. So I hope you get to explore this one. You can see how many variations we can create here by loading our own textures in the gallery under distort. Distort is the place to be. I've created so many different variations at this point. I kind of went a little bit further than this, to be honest, in my own exploration. So we've got that going on. We also have, let's see here. I remember I also explored in this one. Here you are. Here are the halftone dots, right? So in our development, we were exploring halftone pixelated dots as form of texture. So I know it's very popular to do grainy texture, but what if we explored a different pattern for texture? That could yield some really interesting results. So that's what I found out here by using halftone dots as opposed to just plain grain, because grain, in fact, if I understand it well, comes from a digital age. Most of all, grain shows up in those spaces, but halftone has to do with print. It has to do with CMYK, like quite literally dropping in different color dots, cyan, magenta, yellow, black. And that is the halftone history, really. That is the halftone and why it comes from here. And so I love being able to use different aspects, just remix it a little bit, right? We like grain, we like texture. We like grain because we like texture. What if we explored a different pattern for texture? So ask yourself, what pattern can I explore today to really explore texture that isn't the usual grain? That would be a cool thing to explore. So that was week 2 of our entire Photoshop challenge. That was super fun. And I think this right here, we've got exploring week 3 on this one. And so at this point it's cool because we already have in place a lot of different assets, right? We had already, hold on, let me get there. we already had our project, our artwork. What we needed to do is have space in our challenge to know how to showcase our artwork. So that's important, because I think too many times we find ourselves creating an artwork and never really taking it to the finish line. And the finish line isn't quite when you finish the artwork. I think the artwork is finalized, maybe, could be up to you, but when somebody else witness your artwork, to me feels like the finale. So I wanted to explore how can we showcase our artwork in Behance. So as a result, we found ourselves here exploring mockups and different ways to explore how the layout and Behance could be showcased in a more interesting way. And of course, this is for Behance, but you can repurpose this layout for anything else. This is one of our assets for the week. You can repurpose it for anything else. However, I do encourage it because this was the final result. This is how I use that template. I was able to showcase the challenge, right? I always love using Behance because there's just such a beautiful community of creators, and they understand what it is to explore a project via the goal, the challenge, the solution, via experimentation, exploration. So they want to see the process. Let's highlight the process in this part. So we did. We explored all of the fragmentations that it required for us to create this really cool artwork. And most of all, I was excited to showcase and not leave hidden that we use AI generated ingredients in this collage. That was important for me to showcase, but it is something that doesn't get translated via word of mouth. It doesn't get translated via the final artwork because it may not be obvious. So it gets translated when you choose to showcase your artwork in a center stage and have it be admired by other creators or potentially non-creators that can see it with fresh eyes as well. So we were able to showcase our artwork here, and this is going to be living on my Behance page, but you can see how this template was able to make the entire project look together. And in reality, all of these are separate images, right? Separate assets. I exported all of these separately because what we learned in Photoshop, let's go over here into Photoshop to show you. We learned that we have artboards, and artboards are so vital to any process in Photoshop. I think, if I'm correct, they happened because we had artboards in Illustrator, and Illustrator and Photoshop tend to have a lot in common. Not artboards at the time, but they do now. And I think they're a bit of a hidden thing. Not a lot of people think about them unless they have to. And I noticed that they have become such an important process for me because I can always just remix a layout, right? So in this case, I held Option or Alt to be able to duplicate not just the artboard, but also the artwork in the artboard. So that's how I went about this. And most of all, we explored it on week 3, I believe. And most of all, I wanted to create little elements that unite each artboard, because that will, in consequence, actually, in Behance, look like they're together as well. So that's cool. I really like doing this, and artboards is the way to do that. If you always wondered how do people do those carousels where the images are exactly matching, I use artboards. That's exactly what I use. And so I don't know what everybody else uses, to be honest, but I use that, and it's exactly pixel perfect matching. So I'm able to showcase all of this, but most of all use Photoshop to create this template. So I provided this template for you to explore. I think it's one of my favorite things to share, because it's something that I think it's fundamental, is to have templates that help you do things faster. And I have my gamut of those. I definitely have a lot, actually. So that was what we explored there. And on our final one, I believe that was our final one, but we did explore also mockups. Mockups were so cool. And I think when I discovered them, I was shocked to realize that in fact, Photoshop, when you create a new project, it has a bunch of mockups. Look at all these mockups. They're amazing. And there are so many different categories here. Like you got, you know, things for envelopes, for posters, for things that are a little bit more lifestyle. So maybe something being held by a person, something like this, a little bit more collage in this one. Appreciate the collage. And so I love that we can start from here. I love that you can access all of these pre-mates from Adobe Stock right away when you open Photoshop. Of course, you can also go into Adobe Stock and browse even more variations from there. You see this little search bar can help you browse directly from Photoshop without having to leave Photoshop. I know it can get really distracting out there, folks. You know, I'm glad you're here because you're learning something, but it can get really distracting out there, right? Like sometimes I go to YouTube to upload something and I'm like, what was I doing? Right, I got distracted again. So it's nice to have access to our work natively. So let's see here. And let's see here. Let's jump over to all right. So don't switch. Okay. So now we're finally on my favorite part, which is going to be exploring the work that other folks did. And I love the work that y'all created. Some of these were super fun to see. I love this one. I actually spotted this one on Instagram. So if you post it on Discord, make sure to tag me or Adobe Live to see more. So I can reshare and I can reshare your work out into my page because I absolutely love this. You can search for it in App Store. Oh, because I absolutely love this variation, and I like the way that in this one they were very aware of shadows. There was a lot of shadowing underneath the objects to be able to make that blend. The texture above it is absolutely beautiful. I think that's such a smart choice to create sort of an overall texture for this one. This little triangle right here with texture and the little butterfly, absolutely perfect touch. But you can see here in this case, there's just so many different subjects, right? You've got here a bird, you've got here a cube, you got here a balloon. So it doesn't have to be constricting. You can just AI generate absolutely anything. And I love this. Frank, wonderful job. I think you did great on this one. And so, of course, we had a lot of different mockups too. I think the mockups can really shift your work. In this case, we learned about the perspective tool. And I do think that's really helpful. So maybe in this case, I don't know if you meant to go all the way to the edge here, but if you did it manually, the skew option is great, but when it comes to fonts, it can warp some things. I would be careful about that. Maybe put in the background artwork and then do the type. That could be really cool. But I love this kind of environment that you picked. It's very fancy and kind of goes with your artwork. So think about that too, because you don't want to put an artwork that's supposed to be maybe fun and exciting in a very dull area, or something that is more serious in a hyperly, like, I don't know, bus stop. Like, that doesn't make sense. So think about that. I like that you were able to consider that in that option. Let's look at these mockups here. These are challenging. These are not easy to do. They're always really tricky, actually, for me. So I'm really glad that you did not one, but two on this one. Let's see if we can zoom into that one. There you go. Definitely, you need to recreate this. I want this mug. This is an awesome mug. This is from Casual here. Very neat stuff happening all over the Photoshop challenge. So as you can see, even more artwork being generated via some of these live streams. So watch out for the next month. It's going to be really cool. It's always really cool. I love this. Look at the type play on this. There's a lot of challenging areas here when it comes to type layout, but you went there. You totally went for it. The mixed play of type is usually really tricky for most people, but I like that you just went for it. I love that the main word is play. So you said, why hold back, right? That makes perfect sense to challenge font play. And that's from Satlin. Super cool stuff. So awesome. And I see Frank here on the chat. Frank, you did incredible. I love that you tagged me online. So awesome. I will be showcasing a bunch of these works. Look at the type play with that halftone dot. The texture on this one. Wow. I think this makes me want to print it. I want to print it. I want to create a sign. I don't know what texture you used here, but I hope this is the gallery upload, because this is phenomenal as well. There's more than one texture. I see here there's a halftone, but there's another varied texture up here also. This is definitely the type play from Frank. Oh, look at you doing both of them. Oh, this is pretty. You know, I should have known. You're definitely have a final say in the overall texture, and I saw it in the collage as well. So good job. Good job. All right, so we got text effects from other folks here too. I love this stuff. I'm gonna try that challenge, I think. And so many more cool stuff, folks. Definitely keep up with us on Discord and on our YouTube challenge, our YouTube, to see the next challenge that is coming up. Okay, folks, final thing here before we move out of here. Let's see. Okay, well. Okay. All right, folks. Let's see our final page here. I don't know where my browser went. Here you are. I was like, where'd you go? Okay, so my final say here is explore all of these different challenges, but also continue to learn here on my website. I have classes. Under classes, I have Medium Unlimited, which is the stream I mentioned to you earlier, where we explore video here on Adobe Live, and we explore design and photography over on my YouTube channel. So check those out as well. I love exploring and teaching new workflows, and I love seeing y'all experimenting every single day. So again, my name is Cyn Lagos. Thanks everyone for joining the chat, and thank you for joining the challenge. I'll see you on the next one. Bye.